Okay, we're back from that quick break, and as promised, we're going to be talking about colonoscopies and colon testing. So I talked a little bit about sensitivity and specificity last time, and I want to bring that up before I go to grab the boxes and bring them up on the table. Sensitivity is a term, and specificity are two terms that we use in the medical community to describe testing and the results thereof. So to say that a test is sensitive, it's going to basically show you who is really negative from the test, or basically it's going to outline which patients truly have the disease. So that means your false negative rate is basically very low. You want to catch the people with the diseases. And this, it confused me in medical school, trust me. So if it confuses you, don't worry about it. But I do want to bring that because I'm going to be showing you two tests, and I want to make sure that you understand the difference between that. And we use sensitivity to make sure that those people with the disease actually are caught. And when you become very specific, then you narrow it down to a test that truly identifies the positive person as actually having the positive test. And the specificity is where you're looking to hone down those particular results. So sensitivities, again, we want to make sure that people with the disease get caught, and when you're negative, you're negative. And specifically, we want to make sure that if we identify you, that it truly is a positive test. So one of the things we used to do, and until Cologuard hit the market, is we used to do what's called an FOB T-kit. And so I had my trusty assistant bring me one of those. And I've showed these before on the show. They're very simple to do, and we've gone through and looked at them, and I'm going to open this one up, and again, I'm going to go through that. You get an envelope, and it's going to tear the envelope, and no, we're not Johnny Carson, where we're going to be looking to see what the answer is before the question. But you basically are going to have 2 sample sticks, and you're going to get 2 blue bags to basically throw the sample sticks into after they're done. And we're going to lay that out on the table. And then you have the actual sample card, which can be used, and I'll open that up for you to show you what that is. And then we have an envelope that's going to be used to send this back to the laboratory. And then we have an information sheet that should have been in here to fill out your information, which is going to be right here. And I'm doing this because not everybody wants to do a Cologuard, but I'd like to show you some things that I've developed that I think have been useful. One of the things, after you fill out all the information and you get that in there, and you do have a bowel movement, a lot of people are going to use, what we're going to do is we're going to use this stick to irritate the piece of stool, and you're going to brush against it. You're not going to actually try and get stool on the tip of the brush. That's not what you want to do, and they would disqualify the test if there is too much stool on the card. So after you've irritated the water, you're trying to stir it up to get blood and anything else that's on there. You're going to open up, and it's going to open up A, and you'll see there's a little bitty opening right there. That's where you're going to dip it, and you're going to take the water and you're going to dip it on here, okay? And that's all you're going to do. You do not paint with stool. We don't do that, and so we close that up, and then there's going to be on this part of the test, after you put your name and everything of that nature on there, should come off pretty regularly, but it does. We're going to take this particular thing. It has your name, and I don't know if we can zoom in on that, but probably not. But it's got your name and ID, and these little dots around here, right here, you're going to place that right there, and that seals it. And you're going to do 2 samples, one on one day, and then you're going to do another one on the next day. These are timed. They are sensitive. There is an expiration date on the back of the card, 2nd of August, 2018. And they're also, from the date at which you do the test until the time you send it in, that's crucial too. So if you do the test and let it sit there and you don't turn it in, they will disqualify the test. One of the things that I've told patients to do is to take this bag, and we use the reverse bag method. So if you're worried about getting anything on your hands, you make it like a glove, and you actually do that. And then when you're done and you've dipped it on there, you can pull the bag right over the stick, and now you've never touched it, and you can throw that in the trash. So that is one clean way to be able to do this particular test when you actually do have to brush. So now this test by nature is looking for blood in your stool. It is a very sensitive test that if blood is there, but it's not specific at all. There are a lot of causes for bleeding in your colon: hemorrhoids, upper intestinal bleeds, diverticular disease. There are a lot of other tests, a lot of other issues that can cause this test to turn positive. And if it is positive, guess what? You're going to get a colonoscopy based on a very, I would call, very non-specific test. It doesn't really, has a lot of false positives, and that's good because if you are bleeding, but if your polyp is not bleeding, and it doesn't have irritated and it's small, this test will also be negative, so you will miss it. So it's only going to catch those tumors and those lesions that are big. And I don't like this test, and it's only good for a year. When you do it, it's only good for a year, and that is a negative because every year you're fishing in the toilet bowl, and a lot of people get tired of that. So that's the thing. And as we talked about last time, the Cologuard test, and I will bring that back up here. Again, you'll receive, once your doctor fills out the slip of paper and sends it into the lab, this will come to you UPS after the company Exact Science gives you a call and discusses this particular test. And they'll go over all the information with you. They want to make sure that you have not had a diagnosis that is positive for colonic cancer or colonic polyps, because this is no longer an adequate screening test for that. This is a test that's very, very sensitive in that if you're negative from this, you're 99% chance sure that you are negative. So as we open the box, you'll have this little thing right here, which again is a part that goes onto the toilet seat. You put it underneath the seat, it holds it in place, and then we also will, after everything else is unpacked, there is a card in here that kind of gives you some instructions. It also has your information on there. Every sample that we do, whether it be lab or this, has to be identified with the patient, the name and date. And this test is very critical in the sense that it is a 3-day test, meaning once the date you prepare the sample to the lab receives it, it is 3 days. And that's why I tell people when they do this test, do it on a Monday morning or a Tuesday, because you do live in a remote geographic location, which is Pahrump, and there's always things that can happen when UPS picks it up. So as we go into the test further, we're going to open the bag. We see that it's very nicely sealed in there, and that's because there is liquid that is used. We're going to remove the sample items. I'm going to place them on the table so that you have an idea of what we're facing with. So there are 2 parts to this test. Again, this is why I think this test is very, very adequate. First thing is this. This is the only time that you will actually get anywhere near stool. It's a thing. So after you've collected, you've made your sample. Hopefully this is off when you do that. It does have a nice rubber seal on there. When you made your stool in there, you will actually take this little device, you will dip it inside there, get a little bit of stool on there, and it goes into this. This is actually the test for blood. This is the same thing that I was doing with the other test, but it is much more reliable. It's in here, and then it goes in a special little holder where you lock it into place, and that's done that. Then you're going to take this fluid, which is in here, and you're just going to dump the whole thing in here. This is a buffering solution. It is meant to preserve the cellular structures in your stool, and believe it or not, there's a lot of cellular structures that are in your stool. And then after you're done with that, you'll throw the bottle away. You will seal this back up as tightly as you can, place it back into here. Put your information in there, which is this. You'll have the samples and anything else. And it does have a nice instruction book. Certainly don't want to send any of this back. You'll want to seal it up, trying to get the air out, and put it back in here. It does have a self-adhesive thing. And take it to the UPS store, and you are basically done with this test. It's, I think, simpler than the fecal occult blood test, which was that little card. It certainly has the advantage of the fact that it is very sensitive. The reason it's very specific is that it looks for a genetic defect, and that's what the other test does not do. The genetic defect is the cells that are precancerous, and there's a genetic modification that happens to those cells, which is called methylation. And at a young age, I'd say 50, I mean, this test is not indicated for anybody less than the age of 50, but when you're over the age of 50, methylation tends to be really reliable. As you get older, methylation occurs as the older you get. So the false positive rate tends to go up the older you get. That's why we really don't do these tests after age 75, because you're going to get a lot of false positives on this. But if you're at 68, 70, and you get a negative test on a Cologuard, it's negative. And if it's positive, you have about a 13% chance that there's still nothing wrong, which is better than the fecal occult blood test. So you have a pretty good idea there's some issue going on when you're positive. That's a 13% false positive rate, which is much better than the fecal occult blood test. Not only that, it's a more expensive test, as new technologies are, but it's good for 3 years. Sorry, I got 4 up there, but 3 years. 3 years, and because it's so sensitive and because it's looking for that genetic marker, that's why it's so good. So I recommend you doing that, and believe it or not, we're going to go to break and we'll be right back. Thank you very much.